So I'm going to ask you two questions. How do you feel about aging? Excuse me? Not so great. And how do you feel the fashion industry is helping you age? And what was your best fashion decade? And what was not? Well, here's the point of the 80-40 factor. Turning 40 for Nyna, turning 80 for me, and how we see the decades the same and yet so very differently. This is a really fun episode. You're going to love it.
Hello, and welcome to the 80-40 Factor, where deep conversation and social media. Okay, yeah.
Just wake me up when you finally get it. I'm old. I'll just take a nap.
You can just doze. Hello, and welcome to the 80-40 Factor, where deep conversations bridge generations. I'm Nyna Gilpin, entrepreneur and brand strategist, and I am joined by my co-host, the vibrant Diane Gilman.
The giggling Diane Gilman.
Now, Diane and I are 40 years apart in age, but we have a lot in common. One of those is we both have some kind of fashion or beauty trend that we followed in the past that we probably regret.
Yeah, quite a few, actually.
Diane, you have lived through the best fashion generations.
Yeah, the 60s were so amazing. Those were the breakout years. And I lived in LA. Whoever owned a car, which wasn't many of us, went out to Pasadena, where there were all these amazing turn of the century 1900 mansions. As they were clearing them out, everything went to the Salvation Army in Pasadena. And I was just saying, I remember getting a coat that was so now it's like 1965. The coat was probably from anywhere from 1890 to 1910. Scarlet wool, gorgeous, ankle length, big leg of mutton sleeve, and a giant mink lapel that went all the way down to the ankle. Tons of authentic, really Victorian hand embroidered petticoats, and anything went. It was just be rebellious or be a mod girl and be wearing, the little A-line micro mini dresses because length was an issue. And I remember wearing that coat in Southern California, but hopefully it was wintertime, which meant it was about 80 degrees. But we were crossing Sunset Boulevard and there were a group of people in a car driving past, and one of them shouted out the window, "Stupid hippie freaks!" And we thought, how ignorant.
Yeah, when I think of the 60s, I definitely think of the A-line dresses, the mod, like Twiggy vibes.
Yeah.
And then I definitely think about the Bridget Bardot, like sexy.
But it wasn't really Bridget Bardot. It was a whole hippie thing going on where everything was innocent and natural, and it was all the love-ins and what you were wearing to those and the big floppy straw hats, and it was an awakening of youth. It was rebellious. My parents were always about having a heart attack about something I was wearing. Just a terrible matchup of adults to a child, for sure.
Because the 60s, you were in college, right?
Half the 60s. Yeah, 63 onward, but I left for 6 months without permission and went and lived in Swingen, London.
Oh.
And that was really, really, and yeah, Carnaby Street, that was really wild. I didn't have much use for college. They didn't have a fashion department. I knew what I was going to do. I knew what I was meant to do. I knew what I was equipped with, where my talent was. And I just thought, can we get this over with, please? Yeah.
So do you have any fashion trends that you followed in the 60s that you wish you hadn't?
I think the whole love-in thing was not totally me.
You're and I let my touchy-feely person I know, so that just doesn't even
well, but you were taking drugs, so who knows? That was encouraging for touchy-feely. You didn't wear much makeup. In the 60s were not about makeup. I think that the whole Victorian thing, although I was really skinny and it could work, it wasn't exactly me. And when I didn't do anything with my hair, which I really didn't learn how to do until I got into my 40s and had to for television, having a natural afro was definitely a cringe-worthy moment for me, without a doubt. Yeah, not kidding.
I feel like all of my big regrets are with my hair too. So we'll
Yeah,
get
a
into
lot
that.
are with my hair because, believe it or not, it is really top level, 9 out of 10 difficult. Yep.
So now, what about the 70s?
Oh, well, that brought in, and it was the whole Southern California look, which was terrible for me, the 60s and the 70s. The Bain de Soleil, deep brown tan, beach bunny, blanket, bingo look, and Annette Funicello, giant, missile tits kind of look in bikinis. That was never going to happen for me. I was a redhead with freckles and super white skin. So most of my fashion mistakes were trying to change my natural looks. It was never going to happen. I was never going to be tan. I was never going to be Bain de Soleil. I was never going to be the copper tone baby. I was never going to be blonde. And I was never going to be Farrah Fawcett.
Exactly.
And that was the real look for at least the first half of the 70s. And she was so unique and so gorgeous. You were always dealing with someone, and it was new to see them on TV. It used to be fashion magazines where the models were very distant from you and very not animated. And every photo of her was on a boogie board, was in a bikini, was at the beach. Who didn't want that hair?
I know.
Who didn't want that smile? Oh my God. So I think my 70s, I loved the idea of sportswear. Remember, I was born in 1945. There was no such thing as a woman wearing a pant. A jean? Are you kidding me? The only time you saw women in pants was working in a factory because all the men were gone for World War II. They were all drafted. So now suddenly you had jeans, flared jeans. Ah, I loved it. The introduction of sportswear in the 70s was purely me. I was not a frilly, dressy kind of girl at all. Now I had sportswear, tailored shirts, beautifully cut jeans. I loved it.
So for the 70s, I definitely think Farrah Fawcett, but on the other end, I think glam disco.
Okay, so that
Studio 54.
Farrah Fawcett was the first half. Studio 54, and I remember how terrifying my first night there was. First of all, how humiliated were you going to be if you didn't get chosen? And I will tell you my outfit for my first night at Studio 54. I still remember it because I wore that outfit more than once. It was an elongated blazer.
What a surprise.
Dark pantyhose and pumps and a feather boa in black.
Oh my God.
And so it was like tailored micro mini dress. It was like a Liza Minnelli outfit or something.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, for cabaret. And I remember we were let in immediately. It was like, you. And I thought, wow, what a fucking miracle. And there's all these, what I called bridge and tunnel people. You were so superior to them because you got in. But that was that whole thing of coming up with your own personal costumes that were shocking, that were glamorous, that were body bearing. To get into this club, to just seriously do drugs and party, but you actually had to qualify. God, how exhausting. But we did. We did. And That was super fun. I wore that outfit a few times, not only to Studio 54, but other places too.
Where else would that be appropriate?
When I started working regularly in Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
it was filled with nightclubs.
Really?
It was filled with Studio 54 wannabes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an outfit you would wear that would just knock everybody out.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of impactful um, discovery, self-discovery. That's the way I would put it.
Love
Wasn't
that.
necessarily, if Studio 54 had not been there
Mm-hmm.
to push you along that particular track
Mm-hmm.
in life to make it happen, you might not have done it ever at all. That was a genius of that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So from the 70s, let's go to the 80s. I'm finally born.
All a mistake. Oh, shut up. So she had her 40th birthday late last year, decade birthday that really makes you have to say to yourself, yeah, I guess I have to be an adult now. And I'm going into 80, which is totally different territory, but they're those big decade birthdays. So 80 on 80. Oh, yeah. Let's remember some of the really horrible fashion mistakes, like that permanented hair that
Yes.
was deeply curly all over.
Super perms.
And how about leg warmers?
Yes.
And then
leg
using
warmers.
the headband with the super curly hair and the gel
and crimping
and the iridescent eyeshadow and the hot pink lips and nails.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, the land of excess. And sort of brought in by Madonna.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that was a low point. Yeah, I can't tell you that I absolutely loved that, because I didn't, but there was no other way you could be. It was so shoved in your face, and the beauty mechanism that went on in New York City, you know, you were spending every extra minute at the gym or shopping at Bloomingdale's on a Thursday night, but you had to look a certain way, because God forbid you should look like you were an antique or somebody that didn't get it or somebody that couldn't do 2 hours of aerobics and break a sweat and still look good. But oh my God, the outfits you put together just to take an aerobics class at the gym were gargantuan. How many layers there were and colors, and what colored story were you going to wear today? And yeah,
amazing.
Not
yeah,
in
I
good
don't
taste,
see.
So
I don't see the 80s being your era. And also, I think of stonewashed denim as well in the 80s.
that came in towards the end,
The end.
of. It was really, I think, mid 90s when you had the whole Justin Timberlake era with who's
Britney Spears.
Thank you, Britney Spears. Thank you. Old brain. And they wore
the denim
to whatever event it was. That's when my brain clicked, and I started begging to be able to at least go beyond the washable silk I was doing for the network, HSN and QVC, and get to denim, and nobody wanted to let me do it. It took me a long time and a lot of to finally get a chance.
Well, we can't skip over the 90s because that definitely was, I think, obviously, then I was actually having opinions on fashion, really.
I bet.
And for beauty, I remember one of the biggest things was this Cindy Crawford mole. I used to put a mole on my face. 100% I did.
Come
I
on.
absolutely did.
That was a supermodel era. So that was impossible impossible. I remember I gave myself a trip to the Caribbean, and I was staying at some really incredible hotel, and they were doing an Ellie McPherson photo shoot on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went in my room and never came out until I went to the airport. I didn't even feel human. I never saw another living being that perfect, that gigantic. Oh my God. And that was the beginning of this tremendous quest for visual perfection.
Mm-hmm.
You were
Yeah.
nothing if you weren't perfect like them.
Right.
And it was impossible. Absolutely. Now, I do want to say, and don't get me wrong, but the 80s, the 90s, and the beginning 2000s, at least for the fashion industry, were fueled by cocaine. Well, they just were.
I was wondering where you were going with
yeah,
that.
I'm not going to lie about that. And
Yeah,
so,
no, for sure.
what is cocaine fuel? Nightlife.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always an emphasis on where you were going and how chic it was and what you were wearing, but it really wasn't about daytime. And then women had to start working. And really? Yeah, it had to be a two-parent working household. And that brought in Liz Claiborne
Mm-hmm.
and office wear, which gave another layer that was more dependable to the fashion industry than going out every night. But at the same time, it was a realistic trend that filled a need. And
Mm-hmm.
that office wear thing. And Calvin Klein. So the upper level was Calvin Klein
Right.
and Polo, Ralph Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the higher end. And then came Liz Claiborne with one of the biggest companies for fashion ever to grow and be created. And that was everyday wear, which was, believe it or not, revolutionary.
Yeah, I
And
remember
DKNY.
the effect that actually had on me, and I definitely think it changed what I thought about growing up, because I remember seeing, like, in the 90s movies when they would have these flashes of people in New York City, and you would see all of these women in suits with the big